Hello, everyone. Please join me as I tell you this story. I had just left Norfolk Airport after dropping off my mother-in-law and sister-in-law for their trip to the Bahamas, when Rosa called, gasping for breath. Don't go home. Open the garage camera right now. The moment I tapped the screen, I froze. My husband was kissing a strange woman. Just then, my mother-in-law's red suitcase suddenly rolled into the house, with a file resting on top labeled, Petition to declare incapacity. My name is Rebecca Hale. When this happened, I was 47 years old, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force, and responsible for logistics at Joint Base Langley Eustis, Virginia. My family lived in the Hampton Roads area, not far from the base and less than an hour's drive from Norfolk International Airport when the highway was clear. I had worn a uniform for nearly 25 years. I had coordinated hundreds of tons of equipment across the Atlantic, handled military flights delayed in the middle of the night, and stood before senior officers explaining why a shipment of parts worth millions of dollars could not arrive on schedule. I had always believed I was someone who knew how to stay calm when plans fell apart. But that morning, a single phone call from Rosa made every skill I had spent nearly half my life developing feel useless. Margaret, my mother-in-law, and Denise, my husband's younger sister, had been preparing for their Bahamas trip for nearly a month. Margaret was 73, but she still liked to dress as though every place she entered was a church fundraiser. She wore a cream-colored linen suit, a wide-brimmed hat, and pulled a shiny new red suitcase behind her. Denise walked beside her, constantly checking her phone and complaining that the passenger drop-off area was too crowded. I drove them to the airport at just before 10 that morning. Owen said he had a call with a client and could not come with us. That did not make me suspicious. My husband was an asset and estate management advisor. Unexpected calls, private meetings, and thick stacks of documents had become a normal part of our 20-year marriage. Before walking through the terminal doors, Margaret turned back and hugged me longer than usual. Take care of yourself, Rebecca. Her voice was so gentle that I almost felt guilty for sometimes believing she did not like me. Enjoy your trip, Mom, I replied. Don't worry about anything at home. Denise stood beside her, gave me a quick smile, then pulled the suitcase toward the automatic doors. I watched the two of them disappear into the flow of passengers until Margaret's hat vanished behind a family pushing 3 luggage carts. Then I returned to my car, loosened my shirt collar, and thought about the 1 o'clock meeting waiting for me at the base. I had just merged onto Interstate 64 when my phone vibrated in its mount. Rosa's name appeared on the screen. Rosa Martinez had worked for my family for 12 years. She was 62, small, quiet, and had a habit of folding towels into perfect squares. Rosa had never called me during work hours unless Lily had a fever, a pipe had burst, or something was seriously wrong. I answered the call. Rosa? All I could hear was rapid breathing. Mrs. Rebecca. Her voice trembled so badly that every word seemed caught in her throat. Please don't come home. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. What happened? Get off the highway. Pull over somewhere safe and open the garage camera. Rosa, where are you? In the laundry room. I came back for my blood pressure medication. She lowered her voice until it was barely more than a whisper. They haven't seen me. The word, they, sent a chill down my spine. I turned on my signal, took the exit near Military Highway, and stopped in the parking lot of a furniture store that had not opened yet. Sunlight poured through the windshield, making the badge on my dashboard flash. Cars continued moving along the road. A man was pushing a shopping cart. A woman stood beside an SUV drinking coffee. Everything around me looked so normal that it felt almost cruel. I opened the security app. The front porch camera showed nothing. The kitchen camera showed a clean stone countertop and the cup Lily had left beside the sink. I switched to the living room. Owen was standing beside the couch. His arms were wrapped around a woman's waist. I did not recognize her. Later, I learned that her name was Madison Cole, that she was 39 years old, and that she worked as a psychiatric nurse at a private facility in Newport News. But in that moment, she was only a stranger standing inside my home, leaning against my husband as though that place had always belonged to her. Owen bent down and kissed her. Not hurriedly, not awkwardly, not like a mistake that had just happened. It was the kiss of two people who had done this many times before. Madison was wearing my blue-gray sweater, The one I kept in the lower drawer of the hallway cabinet because the living room was always cold when Owen set the air conditioner too low. She pushed up the sleeves, held my wine glass, and laughed at something Owen said that I could not hear. That sweater hurt me more than the kiss itself. A woman only wears the homeowner's clothes when she no longer feels like a guest. I called Rosa back. Leave through the back door, I said. My voice sounded strangely calm. Don't take anything. Just bring your purse and your phone. But Mrs. Rebecca, Rosa, do it now. I saved the video to my phone, then sent a copy to my personal military email and a private storage account. Training began replacing panic. Preserve the evidence. Record the time. Do not rush into a situation before understanding everything that is happening. Just as I was about to close the app, the garage camera detected movement. The side door opened. A red suitcase rolled into the frame. I recognized it immediately. Less than 40 minutes earlier, I had watched Margaret pull that exact suitcase through the doors of Norfolk Airport. Margaret walked in behind it. Denise was right behind her. Both of them were smiling. Neither appeared surprised to see Madison. Margaret even stepped forward and hugged her as though welcoming a relative she had not seen in a long time. Then, Denise placed a yellow file on top of the red suitcase. The camera was not clear enough for me to read the entire line. I zoomed in until the image broke into tiny squares. Even so, the 5 bold words on the cover remained unmistakable. Petition to declare incapacity. I stared at the screen for a long time. That was when I understood that this was not just an affair, not a moment of weakness, not a family secret. They had prepared a plan, and the person they intended to remove from her own life was me. I do not know how long I stared at those 5 words. It may have been a few seconds. It may have been longer. Time does not move normally in moments like that. It contracts around one image, one sound, one tiny detail, until everything else disappears. For me, it was the red suitcase sitting in the middle of the garage and the yellow file resting on top of it, like a sentence that had already been prepared. The garage camera had no audio, but the living room camera did. I quickly switched to the indoor feed. Margaret had just walked through the door connecting the garage to the house. She no longer moved like a 3-year-old woman who had just walked through an airport. She removed her wide-brimmed hat, placed it on the table by the door, and turned toward Madison. "Did we keep you waiting long?" Madison smiled and stepped forward to hug her. "Not at all." Owen made coffee. The answer sounded so natural that my chest tightened. No introduction, no awkward handshake. Margaret knew her name. Madison knew how Owen usually made coffee. Denise even stepped over, kissed Madison lightly on the cheek, and asked, "Have you heard back about the condo?" Madison shook her head. "The realtor said we have to wait until Friday." Owen came out of the kitchen carrying 4 mugs. He handed Madison the dark blue mug I used every morning. There was a small crack near the handle. Owen had once told me to throw it away because he was afraid it might cut my hand, but I kept it because Lily had bought it with the first money she earned from watching a neighbor's dog. Madison took the mug without asking. One more small detail. One more piece of proof that she had been inside my home often enough to know what belonged to whom. Margaret removed the file from the suitcase and carried it into the dining room. She placed it in the center of the table, smoothed the edge of the papers, and looked at Owen. "We don't have much time." Owen sat across from her. Denise pulled out the chair beside him, while Madison remained near the kitchen entrance, both hands wrapped around her coffee mug. The way she kept her distance made me realize something. She was not fully in control of what was happening at that table. She was involved, but Owen and his family were the ones who had prepared this plan. I turned up the volume on my phone. "The Germany trip is still happening, right?" Margaret asked. Owen nodded. "Rebecca leaves Virginia in 3 weeks. 6 weeks of training at Ramstein. She already received the official schedule." My scalp went cold. Only 4 people in my unit knew the details of that training assignment. Owen was the only person outside the base whom I had told the exact departure and return dates. Denise opened the file. The sound of paper turning came clearly through the living room microphone. "Emergency guardianship petition," she read. "But the attorney says we have to prove there is an immediate risk." Owen leaned back in his chair, as calmly as though he were explaining an investment plan to a client. "We don't have to prove she's insane. We only have to prove that her ability to make decisions is declining." Margaret frowned. "What's the difference?" "A great deal. Owen pointed at the file. Insomnia, anxiety, forgetfulness. Medication, use after years of military service. Overreacting under pressure. If a professional evaluation confirms that Rebecca is temporarily unable to manage her finances, the court can appoint an emergency guardian. Denise looked at him. And that person will be you? At first it could be Mom. Then the authority can be transferred to me. Margaret nodded, as though they were discussing who should water the plants while I was away. I gripped my phone until my knuckles hurt. What about the assets in Rebecca's name? Denise asked. Owen did not answer immediately. He looked toward Madison. We just need her report to be convincing enough. Madison set down her mug. I already told you, I can't diagnose someone I haven't personally evaluated. You don't need to diagnose her, Owen replied. You only need to confirm that the records show concerning signs. I'm a psychiatric nurse, Owen. I'm not a doctor. Margaret turned toward her, her voice gentle but cold. We understand. No one is asking you to do anything illegal. I almost laughed. People usually say that immediately before asking someone to do exactly that. Owen pushed a sheet of paper toward Madison. This is only a preliminary evaluation. Rebecca will be overseas. If the court thinks it's necessary, they can order a full examination later. After you've already gained control of her accounts, Madison said. The room fell silent for several seconds. Owen did not deny it. He only replied, We need time. That was the moment I understood more clearly what I was watching. The affair was only the outermost layer. The sweater, the wine, the kiss in the living room, all of it hurt. But none of it was the real objective. The objective was to make me lose control of my own life during the 6 weeks I would be on the other side of the Atlantic. I switched back to the garage camera. The red suitcase still sat near the door. It leaned slightly to one side, and the zipper was not completely closed. Through the opening, I could see the lining inside. No clothes, no shoes, no beachwear. The suitcase was almost empty. I opened the app connected to Denise's gray SUV. 2 years earlier, when she was having financial trouble, Owen had suggested that we jointly list the vehicle on our insurance policy to lower the premium. The car was still connected to the family account, and its security system uploaded video to the cloud whenever it detected movement. I had never imagined that feature would save me. The first recording showed the SUV parked on the second level of the airport's short-term garage at 8:17 that morning. Exactly where Denise had said she left it the night before so a friend could pick it up after their trip. In the recording from 10:12, Margaret and Denise appeared. I had left the passenger drop-off area less than 7 minutes earlier. The two of them did not walk toward the security checkpoint. They circled through a side corridor leading directly to the parking garage. Denise opened the trunk. Margaret lifted the red suitcase so easily that it was obvious there was nothing substantial inside. They removed their travel jackets, stuffed the wide-brimmed hat into the back seat, and got into the car. The next recording showed Denise driving out of the airport at 10:19. The tickets to the Bahamas, the farewell instructions, Margaret's unusually long hug, it had all been theater. I checked the flight confirmation email Margaret had forwarded to me the previous week. Business class tickets. Departure at 11:05. I carefully read the refund conditions at the bottom of the page. Both tickets could be canceled before departure without a penalty. I logged into the family rewards account. Owen had created it years earlier to combine all of our airline miles. In the transaction history, the Bahamas trip had been canceled at 9:58. 10 minutes before I hugged Margaret outside the terminal, I sat in my car, listening to the steady rush of the air conditioner and staring at the cancellation notice on the screen. I remembered the way Margaret had hugged me, her hand patting my back. Take care of yourself, Rebecca. At the time, I thought she was showing affection. Now I understood that she had simply been saying goodbye to the woman they believed was about to be removed from her own family. My phone vibrated. A message from Owen appeared. Mom and Denise just texted. They're through security. Drive safely. Love you. I looked back at the living room camera. Owen was sitting in front of the file declaring me incapacitated, one hand resting on Madison's shoulder. He had just lied to me while his mother, his sister, and his mistress were all inside my house. I slowly typed a reply. I just left Norfolk. See you tonight. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. I'll make your favorite dinner. I set the phone down, watched the traffic moving along Military Highway, and took a deep breath. They believed the fake trip had worked. They believed I knew nothing. And for the first time since Rosa called, I understood that their ignorance was the only advantage I had. I did not drive home immediately. Instead, I called Rosa. She answered after the first ring. "Are you out of the house?" "Yes." Rosa's voice was still trembling. "I'm in the parking lot of the pharmacy on Jefferson Avenue. I'm coming." 15 minutes later, I saw her sitting inside her old Toyota Corolla, both hands clutching her purse against her chest. Rosa had worked in my home for 12 years. She had stayed with Lily when she developed pneumonia at 4, stayed awake with me until 2 in the morning, cleaning up water after an upstairs pipe burst, and brought tamales every Christmas, even though I told her every year not to go to the trouble. I was accustomed to a calm, private Rosa who almost never spoke badly about anyone. The woman sitting in front of me that day was no longer calm. I got into the passenger seat, closed the door, and looked at her. "Rosa, I need you to tell me everything. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small you think it is." She lowered her eyes to her hands. "That woman has been to the house before." "I know." I kept my voice steady. "How many times?" Rosa remained silent. 7 times, she finally said. "Maybe 8. The number fell between us like something heavy. Not once, not a chance meeting. 7 times. What did you see her do?" "The first time, Mr. Owen said she was a specialist from the insurance company. She asked about your medication, your appointments, and the periods of insomnia you experienced after returning from assignments in Europe." Rosa swallowed. "I thought it was a normal procedure." "The second time?" "She went into the master bathroom." I turned fully toward her. "Why?" "Mr. Owen said she needed to see the medication list, but I saw her open the medicine cabinet and photograph every bottle." I immediately remembered the nearly full bottle of Zolpidem left over from a 3-week period of insomnia the year before. I had taken exactly 4 pills, then stopped because I disliked how heavy-headed they made me feel in the morning. Owen knew that. He had even told me I should throw the rest away. I had not. "What else?" Rosa looked at me, her face filled with guilt. "Once, she went into your office. My office is always locked. Mr. Owen opened it." I said nothing, she continued. She took a blue file from the bottom drawer. "Military hospital records." I recognized it because I had dusted around it before. I knew exactly what that file contained. It was a copy of treatment notes from a military vehicle accident in Germany 8 years earlier. I had not been seriously injured, but afterward a doctor had documented a temporary anxiety response and insomnia, a provisional diagnosis, not a mental illness, not an inability to make decisions, but if someone removed a few lines from their context, they could make it look like something entirely different. What did she do with the records? She photographed them. Several pages. "Why didn't you tell me?" Rosa closed her eyes. "Because Mr. Owen said you had agreed to it. He said the military required an insurance update before your trip to Germany." Her voice broke. "I believed him. This isn't your fault, but I saw it. You saw separate pieces. They arranged everything to make it appear normal." I said that to Rosa, but I was also saying it to myself. Skilled liars rarely invent a story that is completely foreign. They take real things, bend them little by little, and place them beside one another until outsiders can no longer recognize the line between truth and conspiracy. Rosa reached into her purse and took out a piece of paper folded into quarters. "There's one more thing." I opened it. It was a printed appointment notice from a private psychiatric clinic in Newport News. The patient's name was blank. Below, it was an appointment date exactly 2 days after I was scheduled to fly to Germany. "I found it in the office trash last week," Rosa said. "I was going to ask Mr. Owen about it, but then he came in." I photographed the paper and immediately sent it to my private storage account. Then I asked Rosa whether she would be willing to tell an attorney everything she had seen. She did not hesitate. "Yes." I called Naomi Reed from the car. Naomi was 58 and had once worked as a trial attorney for the Virginia Attorney General's office before specializing in divorce, inheritance, and financial fraud. A former colleague at the base had given me her name years earlier after an estate dispute. I had never imagined I would need that phone number myself. Naomi's assistant said her afternoon schedule was full. I said only one sentence. "My husband is preparing documents to have me declared incapacitated while I'm on an overseas assignment." 10 minutes later, Naomi called back. Where are you? Newport News. Come to my office at 2. Don't go home before you meet with me. Naomi's office was on the 6th floor of a building overlooking the James River. She did not hug me. She did not look at me with pity. She simply poured me a glass of water, placed a yellow legal pad in front of herself, and said, "Tell me everything in chronological order." I started at Norfolk Airport. I showed her the cameras, the garage video, the conversation around the file, the canceled flight, and Owen's message claiming that his mother and Denise had passed through security. Naomi barely interrupted, but when I replayed the frame showing Margaret placing the documents on the table, she raised one hand. "Stop there." She leaned toward the screen, enlarged the upper right corner. I zoomed in. Beneath the emergency guardianship petition was a cream-colored envelope with a red seal. 4 typed words appeared across the front. Estate of Victor Hale. Naomi leaned back. "Who is Victor Hale?" "My father-in-law. He died 8 months ago." "Did he have significant assets?" "He owned a shipyard and waterfront property." Owen said everything was still going through probate. "What was it worth?" "I don't know exactly. Possibly more than $10 million. Naomi stopped looking at the screen. She looked at me. "Rebecca, this may not be only a divorce case. I'm beginning to think the same thing. If Victor left you an interest in the estate, or if your voting rights affect the sale of an asset, having you declared incapacitated would give them an advantage." She tapped her pen lightly against the table. "We need to find the will, any codicils, corporate records, and every pending transaction." "What about tonight? You go home." I thought I had misheard her. "Naomi, you go home, eat dinner, act normally, and do not let Owen know you saw anything." "I'm not sure I can do that. You're an Air Force lieutenant colonel. You've stood in conference rooms with people concealing mistakes bigger than their emotions. Tonight, you are not going home as a betrayed wife." Naomi paused. "You are going home as the only witness who knows the plan has already begun." That sentence stayed with me during the entire drive back to Hampton. When I opened the door at 6:40, the smell of baked salmon and garlic butter filled the house. Owen stood in the kitchen with his sleeves rolled up, looking exactly like the man I had been married to for 20 years. He smiled. "You're home." I set down my bag. "Yes." He walked over and kissed my forehead. I allowed him to. "How are Mom and Denise?" I asked. Owen opened the cabinet and took out 2 plates. Their flight was delayed almost 3 hours. You know how airports are. I watched him place salmon on the plates. His hands did not shake. His voice did not change. "Did they still fly out?" "Eventually." He gave a small laugh. "Mom called from the gate and complained for 10 straight minutes." I pulled out a chair and sat down. "That sounds like her." Owen placed a plate in front of me, then sat across from me. "You look tired. It was a long day. Is the Germany trip making you nervous?" The question came gently. Too gently. I lifted my glass, took a sip of water, and replied, "No, I'm fine." He watched me for another second. Then he smiled. "I know." I smiled back. Outside, the Virginia sky slowly darkened. In our familiar kitchen, Owen talked about clients, traffic, and his mother's imaginary flight. I listened to every word, and for the first time in my marriage, I was no longer listening to him as a wife. I was listening as a witness memorizing the testimony of a liar. That night, Owen went to bed at 10:15. As usual, he placed his phone on the charging dock, pulled the blanket up to his chest, and asked whether I wanted to turn on the news. I said I still had a few emails from the base to deal with. He simply nodded, turned his back to me, and fell asleep so quickly that it almost amazed me. I sat in my office beneath the pale yellow light of the desk lamp, listening to the air conditioner hum steadily in the hallway. On the screen was the list Naomi had sent me before I left her office: bank accounts, investments, insurance policies, real estate, tax records, and every company connected to Owen or Denise. She had been very clear. Only access accounts you are legally authorized to use. Don't guess passwords. Don't take documents you aren't permitted to view. We need clean evidence. The joint investment account was the first place I checked. For years, Owen had handled most of our family finances. He was a wealth management advisor. I managed military logistics. That division of responsibility had always seemed reasonable. I handled flight schedules, personnel, and equipment. He handled taxes, retirement funds, and investment portfolios. I never thought of it as giving him control. I thought of it as trust. I logged in using the verification code sent to my phone. The balance was nearly $300,000 lower than I remembered. I did not react immediately. I opened the monthly statements. The first transfer was $14,500, sent 8 months earlier with the description, portfolio adjustment. 3 weeks later, $22,000 was transferred. After Christmas, $38,750 disappeared under the note, alternative asset allocation. The next amounts were smaller. $9,000, $17,500, $11,250. None was large enough to automatically trigger the alerts we had previously set up. Owen had not taken the money all at once. He had taken it piece by piece, slowly, deliberately, small enough that I would not notice, but regularly enough that after 8 months, the total amount missing was $268,000. I photographed every page, downloaded the statements to a private storage drive, and sent them to Naomi. Just as the email went through, I heard the wooden floor creak softly in the hallway. I closed the browser window and opened a work spreadsheet. Owen appeared in the doorway, his hair messy, and his eyes still heavy with sleep. "You're not finished yet?" "Almost." He leaned against the doorframe. "Don't overwork yourself. Mom always says you don't know when to stop." I looked at the man who had quietly transferred more than $250,000 out of our accounts and said, "I'll remember that." He smiled and returned to the bedroom. I waited another 10 minutes before continuing. In the tax documents, I found a recurring payment to Meridian Life Assurance. The company name was unfamiliar. I searched the policy number listed in the transaction description. A customer portal appeared and allowed access through our shared family email address. It was a $1.8 million life insurance policy. I was the insured person. Owen Hale was the primary beneficiary. The policy had been opened 4 months earlier. In the health disclosure section, someone had indicated that I had a history of insomnia, military-related anxiety, and was being monitored for declining decision-making ability. I read every line twice. I had never completed that form. I had never met the insurance agent. I had never agreed to purchase a $1.8 million policy. At the end of the file was an electronic signature bearing the name Rebecca Hale. It looked almost like my signature, but the final stroke curved downward. I always curved mine upward. It was a difference so small that an outsider might not notice. Owen should have known. I called Naomi the next morning while sitting in my car outside the base gate. "There's an insurance policy," I said. $1.8 million. She was silent for a few seconds. "Did you sign it?" "No." "Send me everything. Don't contact the insurance company until I ask them to preserve the application records, IP address, and verification history. Naomi, he's preparing to have me declared incapacitated while taking out insurance on my life." "I know how that sounds." Her voice remained calm. "But we haven't established motive yet. We prove the conduct first." That was what I needed to hear. Not because it made the situation less serious, but because it kept me from moving too far beyond the evidence. Naomi called again at noon. The $268,000 didn't go directly to Owen. Then where did it go? Blue Heron Consulting. I had never heard that name. The registered owner is Denise Hale. I looked through the windshield toward the distant aircraft hangars. Denise had once said her consulting company had shut down after a failed real estate project. She had even borrowed $60,000 from Margaret to pay a contractor. Is the company still operating? On paper. No employees. No office. The registered address is a rented mailbox in Virginia Beach. Over the next 2 days, Naomi used preservation requests and a financial analyst to trace the money. Blue Heron had received a total of $268,000 from our joint account. The money had then been divided in 3 directions. The largest amount, $112,000, had been used as a down payment on an oceanfront condo in Virginia Beach. The name on the purchase agreement was Madison Cole. I looked at the copy of the contract Naomi placed in front of me. The condo had 2 bedrooms, an ocean view balcony, and a scheduled closing date 1 week after my training in Germany. He plans to move her in there, I said. Possibly, Naomi replied. But look at the next payment. Blue Heron had transferred $46,000 to Dr. Edwin Shaw, a psychiatrist working at a private clinic in Newport News. The payment note read, Capacity evaluation and professional consultation. I've never met him. Exactly. The remaining money was divided among legal fees, refundable airline tickets, and a private investigation company. The pieces began to fit together. Madison gathered information about my medication. The private doctor was paid to provide a professional opinion. Owen and Margaret prepared the guardianship petition. Denise used a shell company to conceal the flow of money. It was not an affair accompanied by greed. It was an operation financed with my own money. Naomi closed the financial file but did not slide it toward me. Instead, she took a cream-colored envelope with a red seal from her desk drawer, identical to the one I had seen on the camera. "This arrived this morning," she said. Across the front were the words, "Estate of Victor Hale." "Where did you find it?" "I didn't." Naomi looked at me. "Victor's estate attorney contacted me after receiving a request to verify your signature." "Why did they need my signature?" "Because someone is trying to complete a transaction involving the shipyard." She opened the envelope and removed a notarized document. The first page read, "Final codicil to the last will and testament of Victor James Hale." I had to stop reading when I reached the third paragraph. Victor had left me a 51% ownership interest in Hale Maritime Works, including the shipyard and the adjoining waterfront property. "I don't understand," I said. "Owen told me the estate was divided equally between the two siblings." That was the old will. Naomi turned the document toward me. "Victor signed this codicil 11 days before he died." Beneath it was the reason, written in his own words. Rebecca Hale used her personal savings and borrowed against her retirement account to save the business during a financial crisis. My children wanted to sell. Rebecca was the only person who protected the jobs of the families who had remained with the shipyard for generations. I remembered 6 years earlier, when the shipyard had nearly gone bankrupt after a federal contract was canceled. I had withdrawn $210,000 from my personal savings and personally guaranteed a line of credit. Victor promised to repay me. I told him there was no hurry. We never discussed it again. Naomi looked at me for a long time. "Rebecca, now we know why they need you to be declared incapacitated." I stared at the number, 51% on the page. It was not about controlling the house. It was not only about taking $268,000. They needed to strip away the decision-making authority of the person who held a controlling interest in an asset she had not even known she had inherited. I stared at the number 51% on the page for a long time. In business, 51% is not merely a number, it is control. It is the deciding vote when everyone else wants to sell, mortgage, or dissolve something they do not have the authority to dispose of on their own. Naomi pulled another file from beside her and placed it on the table. The estate attorney also sent the documents for a pending transaction. I never agreed to any transaction. "You didn't?" Naomi opened the first page. "But your husband's family has been negotiating for nearly 4 months. The buyer was Seabrook Coastal Resorts, a resort development company headquartered in Charleston. It had offered $14 million for Hale Maritime Works waterfront property, not the entire shipyard, only the strip of land along the Chesapeake Bay that Victor had repeatedly refused to sell because more than 80 employees still used it to launch and repair vessels. I turned to the next page. There was a development plan for a 12-story hotel, a private marina, luxury condominiums, and an oceanfront restaurant. On the rendering, the shipyard had disappeared completely. The old warehouses, boat hauling rails, and repair docks had been replaced by swimming pools and decorative palm trees. At the end of the proposal was a projected distribution of the proceeds. Margaret would receive $1.4 million as one of Victor's beneficiaries. Denise would receive nearly $4 million. Owen would receive more than $5 million through a family trust I had never heard of. The rest would be used to pay debts, consulting fees, and employee relocation costs. "What does employee relocation mean?" I asked. "Terminating them with a small severance payment," Naomi replied. "Then closing the shipyard." I thought about the men and women I had met at the company Christmas party. A welder named Curtis had worked there for 32 years. His wife had kidney disease, and the shipyard's health insurance covered most of the cost of her dialysis. 3 generations of the Ortega family worked at Hale Maritime. Some employees had entered the trade directly after high school and had never worked anywhere else. Victor knew that. Perhaps that was why he had left control to me. "But if I own 51%, I said, "they can't sell." Not while you have full legal capacity. Naomi turned to a draft board resolution. Owen's and Denise's signatures were already at the top. The only missing signature was the one representing my ownership interest. The emergency guardianship petition wouldn't merely give them access to your accounts, Naomi said. If the court temporarily declares you incapable of managing your financial affairs, the guardian may be able to vote on your behalf. Margaret, or Owen, after Margaret transfers the authority. Everything became terrifyingly clear. My 6-week training assignment in Germany gave them the perfect window. I would be out of the country. They would file the petition, claiming my condition had suddenly deteriorated. The private doctor would provide an evaluation. Madison would confirm the symptoms she had gathered from my medical records. Margaret would request emergency guardianship. Then they would call an emergency meeting and use my 51% interest to approve the $14 million transaction. By the time I returned to Virginia, the property could have been sold. The money could have been transferred. The shipyard could have received notice that it was closing. Does the resort company know? I asked. It isn't clear yet. Naomi pointed to a name on the document. The executive handling the transaction is Claire Sutton, Regional Development Director. The name meant nothing to me at the time. I simply photographed the page and asked the more important question: how do we stop this? For now, I'll send a notice of dispute to the estate attorney and demand that no transaction move forward without your direct consent. Naomi closed the file. But Rebecca, they won't rely only on documents. I know, if they want a judge to believe you are incapacitated, they need witnesses. People who can say you've changed, become forgetful, easily agitated, or dangerous. I thought about the question Owen had asked at dinner. Is the Germany trip making you nervous? At the time, the question had only made me suspicious. Now I understood that it might have been part of the script. He was not merely watching my reaction. He was looking for an answer he could use later. I left Naomi's office at nearly 4. On my way back to the base, I received a call from Pastor Thomas Green at the church we attended on Sundays. Rebecca, do you have a few minutes? What is it, Pastor? He was silent for a moment. Owen said, "You're going to Germany soon." That's right. He also said you've been struggling lately. I slowed down and moved into the right lane. Struggling with what? Insomnia, forgetfulness, moments when you can't control your emotions. I did not respond immediately. Pastor Green continued cautiously. Owen is very concerned. He said you refuse to get help because you're afraid it will affect your career. When did he tell you that? The first time was about 3 months ago. After that, he asked us to pray for the family. 3 months, before the Bahamas flight, before the insurance policy, before I knew Victor had left the shipyard to me. Owen was not responding to a problem. He had been building a narrative. Have you ever seen me lose control? No. Have I ever forgotten a church appointment, endangered anyone, or said anything that concerned you? No, but Owen said, I understand. I thanked him and ended the call without explaining further. Naomi had warned me not to run around trying to defend myself to everyone. People preparing for litigation often made the mistake of rushing to repair their reputations. Every explanation could be distorted into panic. But the pastor's call was not the last. That evening, when I went outside to collect the mail, our neighbor across the street, Susan Miller, walked over. She was carrying a box of cookies, but she did not hand it to me immediately. Rebecca, are you all right? Why are you asking? Susan looked toward my house as though she was afraid Owen might hear her. He said you left the gas stove on twice. I had never left the gas stove on. Our house had an electric stove. What else? She looked uncomfortable. He said you drove home but couldn't remember the route, that sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night believing you're still at the base. Every lie was built around one true detail. I had once driven home after a 14-hour shift and joked that I was so tired I could not remember crossing the bridge. I had once awakened when my unit's alert phone rang, but I had never been disoriented. I had never been dangerous. The next morning, the call came from Lily's high school. The school counselor, Janet Moore, asked whether I could meet with her privately. When I entered her office, she closed the door and took out a set of notes. Owen contacted us, she said. He wants the school to keep an eye on Lily while you're in Germany. Why? He said. Your post-traumatic stress symptoms have recently become more severe. I looked directly at her. I have not been diagnosed with PTSD. Mrs. Moore paused. He said loud noises can make you agitated. He's also concerned about the gun in your home. There was a legally registered handgun in my house, secured inside a biometric safe. Lily did not have access to it. Owen knew that. What did he say about the gun? That you once left it on a table after a panic attack. I felt anger rise inside me, hot and unmistakable, but I did not allow it to show on my face, because that was exactly what Owen wanted. A wife who became angry with the pastor. A service member who reacted harshly to a neighbor. A mother who lost her temper in the school office. Later, each scene could become a line in an affidavit. Rebecca became agitated when questioned about her mental health. I placed both hands on my knees. Mrs. Moore, I need you to document the exact date Owen contacted you, everything he said, and the fact that you have never personally witnessed any of those behaviors. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. I will. When I left the school, I sat in my car without starting the engine. Out on the grounds, Lily was walking between two friends, holding her books against her chest and laughing about something. She did not know that her father was turning her mother into a stranger in the eyes of the entire community. Owen was not merely preparing a legal case. He was preparing witnesses. One by one. The pastor, the neighbor, the teacher. And as I watched Lily walk through the school doors, I suddenly understood that the next person he approached might be our own daughter. I did not have to wait long to learn that I had been right. That evening, Lily came home nearly 20 minutes later than usual. She walked into the kitchen, set her backpack on a chair, and stood still instead of opening the refrigerator for juice like she did every day. I was slicing tomatoes for dinner. Owen was not home yet. The house was so quiet that I could clearly hear the microwave clock change from 6:17 to 6:18. Mom, Lily called. I set down the knife. What is it? She looked toward the hallway before pulling out a chair and sitting across from me. Dad came to school to see me yesterday. I tried to keep my expression normal. What did he say? Lily unlocked her phone but did not hand it to me yet. Her hands were trembling slightly. Dad said you weren't well. He said you've been forgetful, easily angered, and might do something dangerous when you come back from Germany. I sat down. Do you believe him? No. The answer came immediately. Lily was 16. She was no longer a child who could be told to believe something just because an adult said it with confidence. She noticed more than Owen realized. She knew I always put my keys in the wooden bowl by the door. She knew the gun safe was behind the picture in my office and could only be opened with my fingerprint. She knew I had never forgotten to pick her up, except once when a military flight landed late and Owen himself had received the message 3 hours in advance. Dad gave me this. Lily took 2 folded pages from her backpack. At the top, it read, Family Member Statement Regarding Cognitive Decline. The content below had already been written. I frequently forgot to pick Lily up after school. I once left a gun unsecured on the kitchen table. I woke in the middle of the night and did not know where I was. I yelled at Lily because I mistook her for someone else. None of it was true. At the bottom was a blank line for my daughter's signature. Dad told you to sign it? Lily nodded. Dad said it was only paperwork to help you rest. He said if I didn't sign it, you might hurt yourself and the whole family. Anger rose inside me so quickly that my fingertips went numb, but I could not allow it to control me. Not in front of Lily, not when Owen was trying to turn every reaction of mine into evidence. Did you sign it? No. Lily handed me her phone. On the screen was an audio file 13 minutes and 47 seconds long. I recorded the conversation. I looked at her. Why? Dad told me not to tell you. Lily swallowed. Whenever Dad says I'm not allowed to tell you something, I know something is wrong. I pressed play. Owen's voice came through the phone speaker, low but clear. You don't need to understand everything. You only need to sign and confirm what you've seen. But I've never seen Mom leave the gun out. Maybe you don't remember. Mom has never forgotten to pick me up either. Lily, your mother has a problem. People who are ill often make their loved ones question their own memories. Then came my daughter's voice. Or maybe you're the one doing that. The recording went silent for nearly 3 seconds. Then Owen said, more coldly, if you don't cooperate, you may have to live with the consequences. I stopped the recording, not because I did not want to hear more, because I needed to breathe. Owen had not only lied to his daughter, he had used her fear of losing her mother to pressure her into signing a false statement. I immediately sent the recording and photographs of the document to Naomi. She called back less than 5 minutes later. "Keep the original on Lily's phone," Naomi said. "Do not edit it, trim it, or convert the format. I'll have an expert copy and authenticate the data." "What about Owen? You still know nothing." I looked at Lily sitting across from me, her eyes red but dry. "I can't leave her alone with him. Tomorrow I'll file for temporary protection based on his attempt to pressure a minor. Tonight, lock the gun safe, keep Lily close to you, and do not confront him." I ended the call just as the garage door opened. Owen entered the kitchen a minute later, removed his tie, and smiled at both of us. "What are you two talking about?" Lily looked at me. I picked up the knife and continued slicing tomatoes. "School." Owen kissed the top of her head. "Everything okay?" Lily answered very softly. "Yes." He had no idea that the phone lying face down on the table contained his own voice, the very thing that could destroy his entire plan. The next morning, just after I left a logistics meeting at the base, an unfamiliar number called me. I was going to ignore it, but a message appeared immediately afterward. "My name is Madison Cole. I think Owen lied to both of us. I need to meet you." Naomi arranged the meeting at her office for 3 that afternoon. Madison arrived 10 minutes early. She was not wearing my sweater. She wore black pants and a gray jacket, and she looked much smaller than she had on the camera. When she entered the conference room, Madison stopped several steps away from me. "I'm sorry." I did not respond. Naomi pointed to the chair across from us. "Sit down and start from the beginning." Madison clasped her hands together. "Owen told me you had a progressive neurological disease. He said the military didn't know because you were afraid they would force you to retire." I looked at her. "What disease did he say I had?" "Early onset dementia, along with post-traumatic stress." Madison avoided my eyes. "He said your marriage existed only on paper, that you had agreed to let him start a new life, as long as he took care of you when your condition got worse." Every lie had been designed to make Owen look like a devoted husband suffering quietly. "Then why did you go into my office and photograph my records?" "He said he needed proof so the insurance company would approve long-term care benefits." "I thought you knew." "What about the guardianship petition?" Madison lowered her head. "I only saw it yesterday. When Margaret said they would control your shares, I realized this wasn't about caring for you." Naomi placed a copy of the psychiatric report on the table. "Is this your signature?" Madison looked down, and the color drained from her face. "The signature is mine, but this document isn't." "Explain." 3 months ago, Owen brought me a set of insurance forms. The last 2 pages were blank. He said the system had not loaded the content, but he needed my signature and professional license number to keep the application active. Her voice began to shake. "I signed them." I turned to the final page. Beneath Madison's signature was the conclusion. "Rebecca Hale shows cognitive decline, paranoia, an inability to manage assets, and a risk of making decisions that may harm herself or a dependent. No interview. No clinical examination. No psychological testing. Only a genuine signature placed beneath a fabricated evaluation." "You had never met me before today," I said. "No, but the report says you evaluated me twice." Madison closed her eyes. "I know." Naomi leaned forward. "Are you willing to confirm in writing that Owen used your signature and professional license number without authorization?" Madison did not answer immediately. She looked at me, then at the report bearing her name. Finally, she nodded. "Yes." I did not forgive Madison in that moment. She had entered my home, worn my clothes, and kissed my husband. But I also understood that she was not the person who had built this entire machine. Owen was the one who had chosen every lie, every signature, every witness. And now, the very people he had used were beginning to turn against him. Madison did not leave Naomi's office immediately after signing the statement. She sat silently in front of the fabricated report, gripping her glass of water so tightly that her knuckles turned white. I thought she was afraid of losing her professional license, but as Naomi gathered the documents into a file, Madison suddenly said, "There's someone else." Naomi stopped. "Who?" Madison took out her phone, opened a message thread, and placed it on the table. At the top of the conversation was the name I had seen in the waterfront property sale documents, Claire Sutton. "Do you know her?" I asked. "Not personally, but 3 days ago I saw a message from her on Owen's tablet." Madison scrolled to a photograph. Owen was standing beside a blonde woman in an upscale restaurant in Virginia Beach. The woman wore a diamond ring. I asked him who she was, Madison said. He told me she was a client, but last night, I checked the email account Owen had logged into on my computer. Naomi looked at her. Were you authorized to access that account? He gave me the password so I could look at the condo documents. I only opened the messages that had already synced to my device. Madison turned the phone toward us. In the emails, Owen called Claire his future. He promised that after I was declared incapacitated, the voting authority at Hale Maritime would be transferred to Margaret. The waterfront sale would be approved within 10 days. After that, Owen and Claire would no longer have to hide. Another email left the room completely silent. When the $14 million is released, I'll repay the money Claire advanced for the legal fees. Madison's condo is only a way to keep her cooperative until the psychiatric file is accepted. Madison read the line with us. Her face went white. The condo isn't for me? Naomi did not answer. She opened the Blue Heron transfer records and pointed to a clause in the purchase agreement. The buyer had the right to assign the condo to a third party before closing. The third party's name was listed by initials C.S. Claire Sutton. Madison leaned back in her chair and let out a short laugh with no amusement in it. I helped him falsify his wife's records so he could buy a home for another woman. I looked at her. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I only felt tired. Owen did not love Madison. He did not love Claire. Perhaps he had never loved me the way I once believed. He saw people only as tools standing between him and what he wanted. Are you willing to turn these emails over to the attorney? I asked. Madison looked up. Yes. 3 weeks later, Owen sat across from me in the deposition room at Naomi's office. He wore a navy blue suit, the watch I had given him for our 20th wedding anniversary, and the calm expression of a man who still believed he controlled the room. Margaret sat behind his attorney. Denise did not appear. The court reporter placed everyone under oath and confirmed each person's name. Then Naomi began with simple questions. Mr. Hale, are you romantically involved with Madison Cole? No. Has she ever been to your home? In her capacity as an insurance specialist. Naomi placed a still image from the camera on the table. Owen was kissing Madison in the living room, both arms around her waist. He looked at the photograph for several seconds. That moment has been misinterpreted. Naomi did not argue. She placed 3 more images beside it. A kiss in the kitchen, an embrace in the garage, and Madison wearing my sweater while holding my coffee mug. Were all 4 moments misinterpreted? Owen's attorney objected to the form of the question, but he could not make the photographs disappear. Naomi moved on to the finances. Did you transfer $268,000 from the joint account to Blue Heron Consulting? Not directly. Did you authorize the transfers? I don't remember. Naomi placed the bank login history on the table. Every transaction had been made from the IP address at Owen's office. The verification codes had been sent to his phone number. The internal notes bore his username. Do you remember now? Owen looked at his attorney. I managed the family finances. The transactions were lawful. Then why did your sister's company use that money to make a down payment on a condo for Madison Cole? I don't know. Naomi entered the purchase agreement, Blue Heron records, and Owen's emails to Madison into evidence. The court reporter did not look up. The steady sound of typing made the silence feel even heavier. Then came the psychiatric report. Did you ever ask Madison to sign pages that contain no text? No. Naomi opened the electronic signature data provided by the storage company. The report had been created at 2:14 a.m. on the computer in our house. The last 2 pages had been attached after Madison signed. Her professional license number had been copied from an older insurance form. Owen shifted slightly in his chair. I don't understand that technology. But the login account was yours. Someone else could have used the account. Who? He did not answer. Naomi pressed a button on the small speaker in the center of the table. Lily's voice filled the room. I've never seen Mom leave the gun on the table. Then came Owen's voice. Maybe you don't remember. Mom has never forgotten to pick me up either. Lily, your mother has a problem. When the recording ended, Margaret lowered her head. Owen did not look at me. For the first time since entering the room, he no longer appeared completely calm. Naomi placed the $1.8 million life insurance policy in front of him. Rebecca Hale's signature on this document is forged. Would you like to explain? I didn't forge it. The IP address belongs to your home. The insurance agent confirmed that the applicant identified himself as Owen Hale. The verification call was recorded. Naomi played the recording. My husband's voice clearly stated that I was at the base, unable to join the call, and had authorized him to complete the application. I had never authorized him. Owen looked at his attorney. His attorney removed his glasses, set them on the table, and said quietly, "I need to speak privately with my client." But Naomi was not finished. The door opened. Madison walked in, followed by Claire Sutton. Claire was not wearing the ring. She placed every email between herself and Owen on the table, including his promise of marriage, the plan to sell the property, and the money she had advanced to pay Dr. Edwin Shaw. "Mr. Hale," Naomi asked, "which of the 3 women in this room did you intend to build a future with?" Owen opened his mouth, but no words came out. The hearing on the guardianship petition took place 2 weeks later in Hampton Circuit Court. Naomi presented the camera footage, bank statements, fabricated report, Lily's recording, and Madison's testimony. Owen's attorney tried to argue that the financial transactions were merely prudent preparations for the family, and that the guardianship petition had arisen from genuine concern about my health. The judge did not rule immediately. She turned to Victor's estate attorney. "Do you have any additional material concerning the wishes of the deceased?" The elderly attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Victor Hale left a video to be shown only if the codicil to his will was contested or if someone attempted to invalidate Mrs. Rebecca Hale's ownership rights." The courtroom screen lit up. Victor appeared in a hospital bed, thinner than when I had last seen him, but completely lucid. Behind him was a timestamp, showing that the recording had been made 11 days before his death. The video shifted to another scene. Owen and Margaret stood beside the bed. "Dad, you only need to sign again," Owen said. "Rebecca isn't a Hale." Victor looked directly at his son. "You want to sell the shipyard. It isn't profitable anymore. More than 80 families depend on it," Margaret interrupted. "Rebecca will control everything," Victor replied, his voice weak but clear. "Because when the shipyard was dying, Rebecca used her own money to save it. All you asked was how much it could be sold for." Owen pushed the papers toward him. "Dad, you're not thinking clearly." Victor looked into the camera. "That's why I'm recording this. I knew you would say that." Then he spoke his final words. "Rebecca is the only person in this family who understands that an inheritance is not a reward. It is a responsibility." No one in the courtroom spoke. Margaret cried, but Victor was no longer there to hear her apology. The court dismissed the entire guardianship petition. The codicil was recognized as valid. The accounts connected to Blue Heron were frozen. The evidence of signature forgery, insurance fraud, and bribery involving the medical evaluation was referred to the state prosecutor's office. The $14 million waterfront sale was canceled. Owen did not look at me when he left the courthouse. I did not follow him. 3 months later, I sat in Victor's old conference room at Hale Maritime Works and cast my first vote as the controlling shareholder. The shipyard would not be sold. More than 80 employees kept their jobs. We established a medical emergency fund and a vocational training program for employees' children. I also created a scholarship in Rosa Martinez's name for her granddaughter, who wanted to study nursing. When Rosa received the envelope, she cried and said she did not deserve it. I replied, "You told the truth when staying silent would have been easier. Not everyone can do that." It took Margaret nearly 6 months to earn permission to see Lily. I did not erase what she had done. The first visits took place at a family counselor's office under supervision. Margaret was not allowed to speak badly about me, mention the lawsuit, or pressure Lily to forgive her. She accepted every condition. I do not know whether that family will ever be fully repaired. Some things, once broken, never return to what they were. But I also did not want Owen's greed to define the rest of my life. I once thought victory would mean watching him lose his money, his home, and his reputation. It did not. Victory was walking into the shipyard every morning and hearing the machinery still running. It was seeing Lily smile again without being forced to choose between her parents. It was knowing Rosa no longer had to worry that her granddaughter would be forced to leave school. I did not destroy Owen. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of the choices he had made. And when the truth was finally brought into the light, I no longer needed revenge. I only needed to move forward without carrying their greed with me. Looking back, I understand that the deepest betrayal is not losing money or a marriage, but realizing that the people closest to you have been quietly rewriting the truth about who you are. But I also learned that staying calm is not weakness. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and justice does not require shouting when the evidence is clear. Most importantly, never allow another person's greed to turn you into someone bitter. Thank you for staying until the end of the story. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to believe in the truth.